you're here to have this dialogue with me today. And I know that we chose to do it on Thanksgiving Sunday when everybody's going to be a little hungry after a song like that. But I think as Unitarian Universalists, we're called to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And when we think of what we're thankful for, oh yeah.
Go ahead. Do it again.
Okay. We're called to, here, I'll do it. Every time I do a principle, I'm going to ring a bell.
Yeah, we thought it'd be kind of cool. Some random.
I was going to do it random, but I can't. I'm not good at keeping secrets either. There is perhaps no more straightforward way that we can support our values than to recognize that we're in a transformative time in our culture where we can choose to step in or step back. And we can choose to accept people as they are and the way that they present, the way that they ask to be recognized, or we can ignore it and pretend that it's not there. Sometimes understanding things that change as fast as this is very hard for people, but it's important to realize that this change didn't happen so fast, did it, Scott?
No, and that's actually a really nice place to start. And it wasn't so long ago that I think a lot of younger folks today have sort of taken the stance of saying, I really want my pronouns recognized, and it's important that people aren't making assumptions about what pronoun I am. But many of those people don't know our incredibly rich history around pronouns. And when I was growing up, we always referred to people as Mr. or Mrs. You would never see a letter that wasn't signed without Mr. or Mrs. there. And rather than saying that even earlier, terms like master and mistress were used very regularly, quite common. We've been using gendered titles for many years, gender markers that sometimes gradually vanish, and sometimes they're replaced over the centuries and they change, but it's really nothing new. We've just made them a little bit wider, that's all, and I think increasing and reflecting our understanding of today.
Yeah, that's funny because when I was in my 30s, I wanted to stop being Miss because that sounded so young. And then I found that even in my teaching career that people thought Ms. was still, radical in the 80s. Which is funny. Let's see. That search for truth and meaning brings us to our fourth principle. The right to search for truth and meaning is important to us. The truth in language is an important way of describing an experience, so it must be constantly evolving with human needs. When we broaden our language to include things like they, them, and sie, zer, or any other pronoun that someone wants to be called, and maybe some that we haven't even imagined yet, we are helping to articulate a new understanding of the human experience. It's an old understanding of the human experience with new language.
And I think it's nice for us to be able to make this simple. I always talk about, the last thing I think we want to do is make anything difficult. And just the safest way to sort of shift from assumptions is to sort of default to they. A lot of times when we, as we did in Time for All Ages, when we see someone, we are largely conditioned to sort of think that if they appear to be a certain gender, that we would then use that pronoun. I do it all the time, and I have to really check myself on that to try to just see, well, would it be okay if I just paused and didn't use any terms that mention a pronoun? Again, and ways to do that could be just using someone's name or using they. Using they is really good because it's the least offensive, and I really believe it's a good term. It gets and practicing it's really good to use they singular because we're not used to that. So the more we practice it, and if you don't want to do anything that's even that complicated, just use the person's name. It's a little cumbersome because you use it a few times, but just use their name. In a perfect world, we really have no assumptions. Then that also brings us to another thought that I have, which is really about how we present and how we're perceived and our gender and all that. It really ties into safety a little bit, and also very important things like ability to use the bathroom and such.
How so?
Well, I was thinking earlier, if you watch HGTV, I feel like we're one of those scripted shows where we're going to pick an historic home, but she wants a modern home. I love it. So I think that a lot of the movements that have happened in the LGBT community haven't always used the most helpful language. I think that we spent so much time on marriage in the military, and we spent a lot of time focusing on the word transgender, but in reality, we're all in the gender continuum, which is a much more inclusive term. And I think that single stall bathrooms would have been a really good solution. The whole movement sort of went right into the eye of the storm, where we could have just talked really about the fact that at every point in someone's life, a single stall bathroom or a bathroom with a lock on it might be helpful. And that's a conversation where you just pull in, I think, so many more people into that. Unfortunately, the conversation around gender-neutral bathroom wasn't about safety.
That's true. And this actually leads us to our second principle, the call for justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. The fight over public accommodations like bathrooms is fundamentally about justice. Do all people have access to safe public spaces? For example, as a woman, I don't always feel comfortable going to a public bathroom. I certainly don't feel comfortable pulling over on the side of the road. And when I had young children, I felt uncomfortable letting them go into single stall bathrooms or multi-stall bathrooms by themselves. Our third principle calls us to accept one another and encouragement towards spiritual growth in our congregations and at large. Truth and acceptance isn't always a warm feeling. It's a willingness to create practical solutions like single stall bathrooms that honor the lived realities of people even when those realities differ from our own. This is demanding work. It takes humility, it takes practice. It takes understanding another person's point of view, even when it's quite different than your own.
And when we look at life on the gender continuum, I find it such a beautiful term because in our culture, you hear the term sex and gender used incorrectly a lot, especially with, I think, political foes who are working against justice. And understanding that sex is really your physical anatomy and gender is more your mind, your spirit, how you identify, I think really helps out in a lot of ways around that. But gender is really, it's a deep sense of being. And the rigidity of gender is really an illusion. And I did a sermon, if any of you want to go back and listen to it, I did a full sermon here on gender, the illusion of gender, and how it doesn't really exist because it changes over time. I mean, earrings meant certain things years ago, and it doesn't mean as much today. And we know so many things have really changed. Short hair for women, women wearing slacks. I mean, that was major when that first happened. People were almost killed and stoned over it in this country, you know. And so I think understanding how that's all changing, and also the difference between, I think, the two of those is really important.
Sometimes it's difficult for people who grew up in a binary world to understand that they're more than two genders.
Can you tell us about that, Ron?
Or that marriage isn't just between a man and a woman. And when I was in California, I was an intern when Gavin Newsom allowed same-sex marriage to happen in San Francisco, and I got to officiate at weddings for people who'd known each other for 20 and 30 years and built whole lives together. And I suddenly realized that marriage wasn't just between people who'd known each other for 15 minutes. And that it could have a deeper meaning, and it didn't matter what your gender was. And my father, who's 92 now, but he really could not make sense of marriage between people of the same sex. He just couldn't. And for 5 days, he hardly talked to me. He wouldn't speak to me. He wouldn't answer my phone calls. And then at the end of 5 days, he said, yeah, I think I just grew up in a different time. And keep seeing things as this one way, but you're showing me that it's something else. And then later I fell in love with Jenny, and he's completely accepting now. So relationships help us change. And the illusions of gender roles, the expectations, the binaries are often used to deny peace and liberty. And what that really is the government deciding that personal expression is under attack. That's all of our personal expression. When we commit to recognizing the true evolving nature of gender, we are actively working toward the sixth principle, a world community where peace and liberty and justice for all is actually possible. We cannot have liberty without the liberty to define ourselves how we wish.
And there's another area which I think language is super important. And, you know, in recent years we came up with the term gender affirming care. And I just find it to be the craziest term. Because like we're all human beings, we all have bodies, we, you know, we're very graciously offered this body somehow that carries us through this life. And it needs to have care and medical care and health and all that, and we realize how important health insurance is and all that. And yet, gender affirming care, the intent of that term was for people to really understand how important that support was, but what it did is it really made it a target. You know, and I would offer that, you know, gender affirming care is when Elon Musk got his jaw redone to appear more masculine. I would offer gender affirming care is when men are able to access Viagra, or gender affirming care is when women are on hormones at certain times of their life, or so many other examples of it that are really important. There's Botox, there's so many things that we all do as people that is gender affirming care, and especially like within a medical realm, it's something that's between the person and the doctor. And I think if we just use the term care, it's really effective. It's so much more effective in that. And then I think the last thing I would just say about that is just that, you know, many times people going through menopause will experience it, and the need to align one's physical self with a doctor and the whole medical industry is really, really important. And by being a target out there, we're not as effective with that term.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's both physical and psychological. It's both. When we embrace the idea of universal need for care, we fully embrace our seventh principle, the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Care is what binds the web of existence together. If one part of the web is suffering, we all suffer. When we see the need for care for the most marginalized as no different than the needs for ourselves, we will ensure that trans youth and anyone struggling to receive care will receive care. We are all part of the interdependent web of existence that needs self-expression, that needs psychological support, that needs kindness and compassion. Ann Burke was here last week. The welcoming congregation invited her. She's a nurse that's worked on the Cape for many decades, advocating for gender-affirming care for her clients. Her dream is to build a home for homeless transgender youth because they're often targeted in shelters. I understand that there's a large number of youth who dance on the gender continuum who end up needing support because their parents are not able to accept them just the way they are and love them just the way they are. My own niece, who is divorced, had a child who was born as Eloise and is now considered Esper, and they are gender non-conforming. But her father cannot accept their gender non-conforming ways, and have made their life really difficult by using religion and shaming to try to get them to use normal pronouns, as he calls it. They are only 13 years old. They were 12 last summer when they attempted suicide at their father's house. I wish this was an uncommon story, but I understand that many youth who feel different than their birth gender are left adrift and lost when the essential relationships in their lives reject them and reject who they think they are. What do you think we could do on the Cape to help people dancing on the gender continuum?
Well, that's a great question, Raleigh. I love that we know when any person has one adult in their life who respects and appreciates them and values them unconditionally, they are very unlikely to take their life, to self-harm. We know that each of us makes a really big difference in that. Ann and I have worked really closely for a lot of years. We do a lot of very creative work behind the scenes, which is really nice. For those of you who don't know a lot about myself, I grew up in Bourne, and I came out to my mother when I was about 18, and she was supportive. We went to a PFLAG meeting at the Falmouth Jewish congregation here because she really needed support at that time. And I learned a lot by sitting in those meetings with her because she expressed her perspective differently than she would have expressed to me, and so it was life-changing for me. Ann and I have, I started Thrive many years ago, and what's different about it is that we're sort of a bit ahead of the curve with a lot of things. So we have right now 3 properties, and back during COVID we picked up the additional 2 properties to do shared living situation. And one of the things that we need is Ann mentioned, is really sort of a really short-term housing support, place where folks can just probably stay without paying for like a few days, a couple weeks, or a month in an environment that's culturally competent. And right now what Thrive offers are rentals. We offer shared living as well as private apartments. There's a few of them. So we have about 29 people that rent from us at any given time. And so I wanted to pull this all in. So a little bit more about Thrive. And I watch that 11 o'clock, like when I'm here. I don't want to go over it. I get it. But I do want to say a little bit about Thrive. So Thrive started in 1996. We're located in downtown Hyannis. We do support about 18 different schools all around the region. We go into the Gender Sexuality Alliances, or GSAs, and we spend a lot of time and effort supporting folks from those organizations who aren't able to get to our meetings. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes on. We do a lot of things behind the scenes with the schools. We have really strong relationships with a number of educators, about 100 educators. If we have any problem in any school, we never go through the front door. We always just send a text to a teacher we know there. We find out what's really going on, usually in a matter of 10 minutes, and then we put a plan into place, usually within half an hour. Something's already happened. Sometimes a parent will tell me something's happened. I've got someone reviewing the video 20 minutes later. So it really is amazing with the trust and relationship that we've built over the last, how many years? 30 years this coming April. And I think in New England, one of the things is, it's nice when you can go to an organization and you know who's there still. I think a lot of things change, but when you have that relationship and that trust in New England, we've been able to go into schools where we would have had situations become lawsuits. They didn't, because they were resolved. In any case, we do have at Thrive, we have potlucks that are open to everyone in the community. You can check out our website, wethrive.us. And then also, we offer programs on Monday evenings for folks to come in, ages 22 and under, from the LGBTQ and ally community. And just to summarize today up really quickly, we are all on the gender continuum, gender and identity continuum. We are inside this gracious body, our costume, this life force to which we are so dependent. But it is a costume. We are within it, our soul, our spirit. Simple things that you could do as you walk out today. When you meet someone, look at their eyes. Assume no pronoun, and see how long you can go not assuming pronoun. Practicing that is really amazing because we notice so much else more. Default to using they, and if you make a mistake, just correct and move on. And it does get better. It's just that the arc of justice is long. And we are seeing many, many positive things happen right now in this day with the leadership in this country and the pushback, which takes time. A lot of positive things are happening amidst all the distractions. I want to thank you for having me